It happened in the blink of an eye. A dangerous fugitive broke into her home, his knife glinting under the dim light. He had her cornered, fear choking her breath, but before the blade could reach her, a blur of muscle and fury lunged from the shadows. Her pit bull sank his teeth into the attacker, risking everything to protect her. The chaos that followed would change her life forever, but not without a devastating cost. Stay with me to uncover the heart-wrenching story of loyalty, courage, and ultimate sacrifice that will leave you speechless. You won't want to miss what happens next. Don't forget to follow our channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in her place? Let's celebrate the unbreakable bond between humans and their loyal companions. The rain hammered down as she parked her car outside the shelter. Emily pulled her hood tighter, steeling herself against the biting wind. She didn't know why she had come here today. Perhaps it was the nagging emptiness that had followed her ever since she moved to this new town. She needed a companion, something to fill the silent void of her small house. Inside, the air smelled of damp fur and cleaning solution. Rows of cages lined the room, each housing a soul with sad eyes and wagging tails. But one cage caught her attention. A pitiful figure curled in the corner, shaking. His ribs were visible beneath his thin, patchy coat, and his eyes, a piercing amber, stared at her with a mixture of fear and desperation. "That one's a tough case," said the shelter worker, shaking her head. "He's sick, hasn't eaten properly in weeks, and he's a pit bull. Most people avoid adopting them." Emily's gaze didn't waver. "What's his story?" The worker sighed. "He was abandoned in a field, left to starve. Someone probably thought he'd be too much trouble. Pit bulls have a bad reputation, you know. But he's quiet, never growls, never snaps. Just broken." Emily knelt by the cage, her heart clenching. The dog didn't move, but his eyes locked onto hers as if silently pleading for a chance. "I'll take him," she said, her voice firm. The worker hesitated. "Are you sure? He's going to need a lot of care, and people will talk, neighbors, friends. You know how they are about pits." Emily straightened up. "I don't care what people say. He deserves a chance." As the paperwork was finalized, the dog was brought out on a leash. He moved hesitantly, his body trembling with each step. Emily crouched to his level, extending her hand. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "You're safe now." He sniffed her fingers tentatively before resting his head on her palm. Emily felt a surge of emotion, a connection she hadn't expected. In that moment, she silently vowed to give him the life he deserved, no matter what it took. Driving home, she glanced at him through the rearview mirror. He lay curled up on the back seat, his breathing shallow, but steady. "I think I'll call you Hero," she murmured, "because that's what you are, even if you don't know it yet." What Emily didn't know was just how prophetic that name would be, and how Hero would repay her kindness in ways she could never imagine. Hero's adjustment to his new life was slow, but Emily refused to give up on him. The first few nights were the hardest. His frail body trembled as he slept on the soft bed she'd bought him, whimpering in his dreams. She often found herself sitting beside him in the middle of the night, her hand gently stroking his bony frame until he calmed. "It's okay, Hero," she whispered during one of those nights. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." The days turned into weeks, and Hero's transformation began. His coat, once patchy and dull, started to shine as he regained his strength. He devoured the nutritious meals Emily prepared, wagging his tail slightly more with each passing day. His ribs disappeared beneath a healthy layer of muscle, and for the first time, he began to trust the world around him. Emily discovered that Hero had a playful side. She introduced him to toys, a squeaky ball, a rope for tug-of-war, and his favorite, a stuffed squirrel. At first he seemed unsure of what to do with them, but soon he was chasing the ball around the backyard, his tail wagging in a way that brought tears to her eyes. "You're starting to feel like yourself, aren't you, boy?" Emily smiled as she watched him roll on the grass, his mouth hanging open in a doggy grin. Despite his progress, not everyone was as thrilled about Hero's presence. Emily's neighbor, Mrs. Carter, had been vocal about her concerns since day one. "You know those dogs are dangerous, right?" she said one afternoon, leaning over the fence as Emily watered her flowers. "I read a story about a pit bull attacking its owner. You're taking a big risk." Emily bit back a sharp reply and forced a smile. "Hero's not dangerous. He's sweet and gentle." Mrs. Carter scoffed. "That's what they all say. Just be careful. You'll regret it when he turns on you." The words stung, but Emily didn't let them shake her faith in Hero. She saw the kindness in his amber eyes and the way he leaned into her touch, seeking comfort. He wasn't the monster the world had made him out to be. He was a survivor, just like her. One evening after a particularly long day at work, Emily returned home to find Hero waiting by the door, his tail thumping against the floor. His excitement at seeing her never failed to brighten her mood. She dropped her bag and knelt to greet him. "Hey, buddy. Miss me?" she asked, scratching behind his ears. Hero licked her face in response, his enthusiasm making her laugh. It was moments like these that reminded Emily why she had taken a chance on him. After dinner, Emily decided to take Hero for a walk. The summer air was warm, and the stars were beginning to dot the night sky. Hero trotted beside her, his leash loose in her hand, as they wandered through the quiet neighborhood. He had become her constant companion, a source of comfort and joy in her otherwise solitary life. As they approached a nearby park, Hero suddenly froze. His ears perked up, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Emily followed his gaze and saw a figure lurking near the bushes. Her heart skipped a beat as the man stepped into the dim glow of a streetlight, his face partially hidden by a hood. "Let's go home, Hero," she whispered, tugging gently on his leash. Hero obeyed, though his head remained turned toward the stranger. Emily quickened her pace, her pulse racing as she glanced over her shoulder. The man was gone, but an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. Back home, she locked the door and double-checked the windows. Hero sat by her side, his body tense, as if sensing her anxiety. "You're my protector, aren't you?" she said softly, running her fingers through his fur. Hero leaned into her touch, his eyes reflecting the trust and devotion he felt for her. As she settled into bed that night, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Hero lay on the floor beside her, his head resting on his paws. His presence was a comfort, but the memory of the hooded man lingered in her mind. Unbeknownst to her, this was just the beginning. Hero's loyalty would soon be tested in ways she could never have imagined. And when the time came, he would prove that the love of a dog knows no bounds, even if it means risking everything. The unsettling encounter at the park lingered in Emily's mind over the next few days. She tried to push it aside, convincing herself it was just a random passerby, but Hero's uncharacteristic growling that night kept replaying in her head. It was as if he had sensed something she couldn't see. Hero's behavior changed after that night. He became more alert, his ears constantly twitching at even the smallest noises. At first, Emily thought he was just being overly cautious, but soon she noticed the subtle ways he seemed to patrol the house. He would sit near the front door during the day, his amber eyes scanning the street through the window. At night, he stayed close to her, lying at the foot of her bed, his body tense and ready. One evening, Emily decided to unwind by watching a movie. Hero lay beside her on the couch, his head resting on her lap. She absent-mindedly stroked his fur as the flickering screen filled the room with light. The cozy atmosphere almost made her forget her unease. Almost. A sudden noise outside shattered the tranquility. It was faint. A metallic clink, like someone fiddling with the gate. Hero's head shot up, his body stiffening. He let out a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down Emily's spine. Probably just the wind, she said, trying to reassure herself. But Hero's growl deepened, his ears pinned back. Emily hesitated before standing up. She peeked out the window but saw nothing unusual. Still, the nagging feeling of being watched crept back into her. She locked the front door and double-checked the windows, her heart pounding. "Come on, Hero," she said softly. "Let's go to bed." Hero followed her upstairs, but remained restless, pacing the room and sniffing at the air. Emily tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made her flinch. Hero eventually settled at her feet, his eyes half closed, but his ears alert. Around midnight, Emily was jolted awake by the sound of breaking glass. Her heart raced as she sat up, adrenaline surging through her veins. Hero was already on his feet, barking fiercely. The sound came from downstairs. "Stay here, Hero," Emily whispered, grabbing her phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed 911, but before she could press call, she heard heavy footsteps approaching the stairs. The door to her bedroom burst open and a man stepped inside. It was the same hooded figure from the park, but now his face was uncovered, a gaunt, wild-eyed man, clutching a knife. "Don't scream," he hissed, shutting the door behind him. "I don't want to hurt you. Just do as I say." Emily froze, her mind racing. Hero stood between her and the intruder, his growls echoing through the room. The man's gaze flicked to the dog, his lips curling into a sneer. "Call off your mutt," he snapped, raising the knife, "or I'll deal with him first." Emily's voice shook. "Please don't hurt him." But Hero didn't wait for instructions. With a ferocious snarl, he launched himself at the man, his jaws clamping down on the intruder's arm. The knife clattered to the floor as the man cried out in pain, struggling to free himself from Hero's grip. The room erupted into chaos. Hero held on, his growls intensifying as he fought to protect Emily. The man managed to grab the knife with his free hand, his movements desperate and erratic. Emily screamed as the blade slashed toward Hero, and time seemed to slow. Hero yelped, his body jolting as the knife found its mark. Blood stained his fur, but he didn't let go. With one final powerful bite, he forced the man to the ground. Emily seized the opportunity to grab the knife and fling it across the room. She fumbled for her phone and called 911, her voice shaking as she begged for help. The intruder groaned, his strength fading as Hero pinned him down. Emily rushed to Hero's side, her hands trembling as she pressed against the wound on his chest. "Stay with me, Hero," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, stay with me." The sound of sirens in the distance brought a flicker of hope, but Hero's breathing was labored, his eyes beginning to close. Emily cradled him, her sobs filling the room. When the police arrived, they arrested the intruder and called for an emergency veterinarian. But deep down, Emily knew Hero had given everything he had to protect her. The police officers worked quickly to secure the scene, their radios crackling with updates as they led the injured fugitive away in handcuffs. But Emily couldn't focus on anything except the lifeless weight of Hero in her arms. His once bright amber eyes were now half closed, his breathing shallow and uneven. "Stay with me, Hero," she whispered, her voice trembling. Blood seeped between her fingers as she tried to apply pressure to his wound. The sight was unbearable, and the metallic scent in the air made her stomach churn. One of the officers, a young man with kind eyes, crouched beside her. "Ma'am, we've called for an emergency vet. They're on their way." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She looked down at Hero, stroking his head gently. "You're my brave boy," she murmured. "You saved me." Hero let out a faint whine, his body shuddering as he tried to lift his head. Emily cradled him closer, her heart breaking as she realized how much he was fighting just to stay with her. Minutes felt like hours until the veterinary team arrived. They rushed in with a stretcher, and Emily reluctantly let them take Hero from her arms. As they carried him to the ambulance, she followed close behind, refusing to leave his side. The ride to the emergency clinic was tense. Emily sat in the back with Hero, her hands never leaving his fur. The vet worked quickly, administering painkillers and trying to stabilize him. Emily clung to every word, desperate for a shred of hope. "He's lost a lot of blood," the vet said gently, her expression grim. "We'll do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself." Emily's chest tightened and she nodded, unable to speak. She leaned down, her forehead resting against Hero's. "You're going to get through this," she whispered. "You're stronger than anyone I know." When they arrived at the clinic, Hero was rushed into surgery. Emily sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly together, her mind replaying the horrifying events of the night. She couldn't stop blaming herself. If she had been more cautious, if she had locked the gate, maybe Hero wouldn't be fighting for his life right now. Hours passed, and finally, the vet emerged from the operating room. Her face was etched with sorrow, and Emily's heart sank. "He fought so hard," the vet said softly, "but his injuries were too severe. I'm so sorry." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the words sank in. A wave of anguish crashed over her, and she buried her face in her hands, her sobs breaking the silence of the room. When she was allowed to see Hero one last time, Emily felt as though her heart might shatter. He looked peaceful, as if he were simply sleeping. She knelt beside him, her fingers gently tracing the contours of his face. "You were my hero," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved my life, and I'll never forget you. Thank you for loving me the way you did." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pressed a kiss to his forehead. The pain was unbearable, but amidst the sorrow, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Hero had given her so much more than his protection. He had shown her the true meaning of loyalty and unconditional love. In the days that followed, the community rallied around Emily. News of Hero's bravery spread, and people from all over shared stories of their own dogs who had touched their lives. Emily found solace in their support, though the ache of losing Hero never truly faded. She decided to honor Hero's memory by starting a foundation in his name, dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating misunderstood dogs like him. She wanted the world to see what she had seen in Hero, a heart full of love, a soul unshaken by the hardships he had endured. Every time she looked at the plaque bearing Hero's name, Emily felt a mixture of pain and pride. He may have been taken too soon, but his legacy would live on, touching countless lives and proving that even the most unlikely heroes can leave an indelible mark on the world. The days following Hero's passing were filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. Emily's home, once vibrant with the sound of his paws on the floor and his cheerful barks, now felt eerily silent. The absence was deafening, and every corner of the house seemed to carry a memory of him. His bed remained untouched in the living room, and his favorite stuffed squirrel lay abandoned in the corner. Emily struggled to find her footing in the wake of such grief, but she was determined not to let Hero's sacrifice be in vain. She spent hours reading messages and letters from strangers who had heard his story. People from all over shared their condolences, but more than that, they shared how Hero's courage had inspired them. One letter stood out, a handwritten note from a woman in a neighboring town. She described her own rescue dog, a pit bull named Max, and how Hero's story had given her the courage to stand up against her landlord, who had threatened to evict her because of Max's breed. "You and Hero showed me that love is stronger than fear," the letter read. "Thank you for reminding me to fight for what's right." The words struck a chord deep within Emily. She realized that Hero's impact didn't have to end with his death. His bravery had touched lives far beyond her small town, and she could carry that torch forward. That night, As she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by letters and photos of Hero, an idea began to take shape. The following week, Emily threw herself into action. She reached out to local animal shelters, rescue organizations, and community leaders, sharing her vision for a foundation in Hero's name. Her goal was simple: to help dogs like Hero, misunderstood, abandoned, and in need of a second chance, find the love and care they deserved. The Hero's Heart Foundation was born. Its mission was clear: to rescue and rehabilitate dogs, provide education about misunderstood breeds, and offer support to families willing to adopt these incredible animals. Emily poured her grief into the project, channeling her pain into something meaningful. The first event hosted by the foundation was a community adoption fair. Emily spent weeks organizing it, working late into the night to ensure every detail was perfect. The day of the event, the park was filled with people, booths, and dozens of dogs looking for their forever homes. Emily stood by a large banner with Hero's picture and the words, "Every dog deserves a chance." She wore a t-shirt with Hero's name printed on it, her heart swelling with both pride and sadness. As families met the dogs and volunteers shared their stories, Emily felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in weeks. Toward the end of the event, a young boy approached her, holding the leash of a timid pit bull. His mother followed close behind, tears in her eyes. "Is this your dog?" the boy asked, pointing to the banner. Emily knelt to his level, smiling through the ache in her chest. "He was my dog," she said softly. "His name was Hero." The boy patted the pit bull's head, his small hand gentle. "My dog's name is Buddy," he said. "He was scared, but now he's happy. I think Hero would like him." Emily's throat tightened, and she nodded. "I think he would too." That night, as Emily reflected on the event, she felt something she hadn't felt since Hero's passing: hope. The foundation was already making a difference, and Hero's legacy was growing with every dog that found a home and every person who opened their heart to love. Months turned into years, and the foundation flourished. Emily's grief never fully disappeared, but it transformed into a quiet strength. She found solace in the stories of families who adopted dogs through Hero's heart, each one a testament to the love and loyalty Hero had shown her. One evening, Emily visited Hero's grave, a small stone marker in her backyard beneath his favorite tree. She sat beside it, her hand resting on the cool stone. "You were my hero," she said, her voice steady. "And now, you're the hero for so many others. I hope I'm making you proud." The wind rustled the leaves above her, and for a brief moment, Emily swore she could feel Hero's presence, his unwavering love still guiding her, even from beyond. The Hero's Heart Foundation became more than Emily had ever dreamed it could be. Within a year, it had rescued over 100 dogs, many of them pit bulls and other misunderstood breeds. Families who once feared adopting these dogs were now finding joy and companionship in their new pets. Hero's story, featured in newspapers and local news segments, had become a beacon of hope and inspiration. But with success came challenges. Emily found herself stretched thin, managing fundraisers, coordinating adoptions, and working to dispel the stigma surrounding pit bulls. One afternoon, as she sat in the foundation's small office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and unanswered emails, the phone rang. "Hero's Heart Foundation, this is Emily," she answered, her voice weary but polite. "Miss Carter?" The voice on the other end was deep and steady. "My name is Officer Daniel Wright. I'm calling because we've encountered a situation with a pit bull that might need your help." Emily's heart quickened. "What kind of situation?" "There's a dog that was found during a drug raid," the officer explained. "He was chained up in a backyard, severely malnourished. He's aggressive, likely due to abuse, but he's still young. Animal control wants to put him down, but I thought of your foundation. Do you think you could help?" Emily's mind raced. She'd dealt with difficult cases before, but Taking in an aggressive dog with a traumatic past required careful handling. Still, she couldn't ignore the opportunity to save another life. "I'll come see him," she said. "Send me the address." The next day, Emily drove to the shelter where the dog was being held. As she approached the kennel, a deep growl echoed from within. The dog, a muscular pit bull with scars on his face and body, stood rigid, his amber eyes wary and defensive. "His name's Chance," the shelter worker said. "Not that he's ever had one." Emily knelt by the kennel door, meeting the dog's gaze. She could see the fear behind his aggression, the same fear she had seen in Hero's eyes when she first met him. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "You're not a monster. You're just scared." Chance growled again, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Emily knew it would take time and patience, but she was determined to give him what Hero had taught her every dog deserved: a chance. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked tirelessly with Chance. She brought him to the Foundation's training center, where experienced handlers helped him learn to trust humans again. There were setbacks, times when his fear got the better of him, but Emily never wavered. She saw glimpses of his true self, like the way his tail wagged when he thought no one was looking, or the gentle way he took treats from her hand. One evening, as Emily sat with Chance in the yard, he did something that brought tears to her eyes. He leaned into her, resting his head on her shoulder, just as Hero used to do. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. "You're going to be okay," Emily whispered, stroking his scarred fur. "And we'll make sure the world sees who you really are." Chance's transformation became a cornerstone of the Foundation's mission. His story, like Hero's, inspired others to see past the stereotypes and recognize the resilience and love these dogs were capable of. Families began to line up to adopt dogs from Hero's heart, their fears replaced with hope. One sunny afternoon during a Foundation event, Emily watched as Chance played in the grass with a young boy who had just adopted him. The boy's laughter filled the air, and Chance's tail wagged furiously as he chased a ball. Emily smiled, her heart full. Hero's sacrifice had set all of this in motion. His love had sparked a ripple effect that was changing lives. Later that evening, Emily returned home, exhausted but content. She sat beneath the tree where Hero was buried, gazing at the stars. "Your name means more than you'll ever know," she said softly. "Because of you. Dogs like Chance have a future. You gave me the strength to do this." The wind rustled the leaves, and Emily felt a deep sense of peace. Hero's legacy lived on, not just in the dogs she saved, but in every person who learned to see the world through kinder, more compassionate eyes. Hero's Heart Foundation had grown beyond Emily's wildest dreams. Its influence stretched across the state, and shelters now contacted Emily regularly for help with dogs who would have otherwise been overlooked. However, as the Foundation's reach expanded, so did its challenges. One day, Emily received an urgent call from a shelter in a neighboring city. A pit bull named Titan had been seized in a dogfighting bust. He was massive, scarred, and deeply traumatized. The shelter staff deemed him unadoptable and planned to euthanize him within a week unless Emily could intervene. As she listened to the details, Emily felt the familiar pull in her heart, the same one she'd felt when she first met Hero. "I'll come see him," she said firmly, already knowing she couldn't walk away from this challenge. When Emily arrived at the shelter, she was escorted to a dimly lit kennel at the back of the facility. Titan was pacing restlessly, his muscles taut and his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and aggression. He lunged at the kennel door when Emily approached, his deep growl echoing through the corridor. "He's a tough case," the shelter worker said, shaking her head. "We've never seen a dog this defensive. Are you sure you want to try?" Emily nodded. Every dog deserves a chance. She crouched down, keeping her distance, and spoke softly. "Hey, Titan, I know you're scared. You've been through so much, but you're not alone anymore." Titan's growling subsided slightly, and his ears flicked forward. It wasn't much, but it was enough for Emily to see the sliver of hope buried beneath his fear. With careful planning, Emily arranged for Titan to be transported to the Foundation's training center. She and her team worked tirelessly with him, using patience and positive reinforcement to help him rebuild his trust in humans. It was slow progress, and there were moments when Emily doubted whether she could reach him. But she thought of Hero, how far he'd come, how much he'd taught her, and pushed forward. One evening after weeks of effort, Emily sat quietly in Titan's enclosure, letting him grow accustomed to her presence. She had no expectations, no demands. She simply wanted him to know she was there for him. To her surprise, Titan cautiously approached her, his massive frame moving with a wary grace. He sniffed her hand, and after a moment of hesitation, rested his head against her palm. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "You're so brave, Titan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." That moment marked a turning point. Titan's progress accelerated, and soon he was wagging his tail, playing with toys, and even interacting with potential adopters. Despite his intimidating appearance, Titan revealed a gentle, affectionate side that melted the hearts of everyone who met him. Word of Titan's transformation spread, drawing attention from media outlets and animal advocacy groups. Donations poured in, and the Foundation's mission gained even more support. But with the newfound attention came scrutiny. Critics questioned whether dogs like Titan should be given second chances, arguing that they were too dangerous to be trusted. Emily faced the backlash head-on. She spoke at community events, sharing Hero's story and the countless success stories from the Foundation. She emphasized the importance of compassion, education, and understanding. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. One day, a family visited the Foundation, hoping to adopt Titan. They had read his story and felt a connection to his journey. The couple, accompanied by their teenage daughter, spent hours playing with Titan, who responded with an exuberance that brought tears to Emily's eyes. As they finalized the adoption paperwork, the mother turned to Emily. "Thank you for believing in him," she said. "He's going to be part of our family now, and we'll make sure he knows he's loved." Emily watched as Titan left with his new family, his tail wagging as he hopped into their car. It was a bittersweet moment. She would miss him, but her heart swelled with pride knowing he had found a forever home. That evening, Emily returned to Hero's grave as she often did after significant milestones. She sat beneath the tree, the sun casting a warm glow over the yard. "You did this, Hero," she said softly. "You taught me to see beyond fear and to believe in second chances. Because of you, dogs like Titan have a future." As the wind whispered through the leaves, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. Hero's legacy wasn't just about the dogs she had saved. It was about the lives they had touched, the perceptions they had changed, and the hope they had inspired. Years later, Emily stood beneath the tree where Hero rested, the Foundation thriving beyond her dreams. His story had inspired thousands, transforming fear into love and stigma into understanding. "You'll always be my hero," she whispered, touching the stone that bore his name. As a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, Emily smiled, knowing Hero's legacy would live on in every life touched by his courage. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to follow our channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. How has a dog or pet changed your life? Share your story and let's honor the incredible bonds we share with our furry heroes.